Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well today. So I am back today with another sewing project, and today's project is a little bit more of a basic piece. For the spring season this year, I wanted to add a rib knit t-shirt style top to my wardrobe that was in more of a neutral color. I felt like I needed something a little bit more neutral to mix and match with some different pieces in my wardrobe, and I'm really pleased with how this top turned out. I did end up adding some kind of fun sleeves to it, so I'll show it in just a second so you guys can see that. But I am going to be making my own pattern for this top today by tracing out a couple of existing shirts in my wardrobe, and I will show you how I go through that process. So I'm really pleased with the final shirt. So here is what it looks like. It is made from some beautiful bamboo rib knit from fabric.com, and this color is somewhere between pink and ivory, so it's a little bit more neutral but has a little bit of a pink tinge. I think it's coming up a little bit darker on camera, but it is such a beautiful color. So I made this with a slightly rounded square neckline here, and then these kind of subtle balloon sleeves, which I think just make it a little bit unique and interesting and keep it from being just a plain t-shirt. So I really like that detail, and this fabric is such a beautiful quality. Fabric.com has this fabric in a few other colors, and I do want to order it in baby blue and pink because I think that would be really pretty for spring, and I think I'd like to make this top a couple of more times. But I'm going to go ahead and jump in and show you guys how to make the pattern and how I made the shirt. To make the pattern for this shirt, I'm going to be working with two of my favorite sweaters, and the first one for the front and back pieces is this rib knit top. I chose this because it has a similar amount of stretch and is a fitted style, which is what I want for this shirt. So to start, I'm going to turn it wrong side out so I can get a look at the actual shape of these pieces, and then I've taped together some computer paper so that I can draw out my pattern. To make this easier to draw out, I'm going to go ahead and find the center front of my front piece on the sweater. And to do this, I'm going to fold this so that the shoulder seams are together and mark the front neckline in the center. And then I'll do the same thing at the hem of the shirt using the side seams and folding that together and again marking the center. Next, I'm going to lay the shirt out so that I can trace around it, and I'm going to make sure that the seam allowances, or where the seam is sewn on the shirt, is laying flat so that I have all of that fabric laid out to trace around. So now I can start marking. I'm going to mark the centers that we marked on the shirt onto the paper, and then I will also mark the top of the shoulder and then the shoulder above the armhole. I'm just using a pencil here and making little dots, and then I'll come back and connect these later. Then I'll mark the underarm and also trace along the curve of this shirt. Since the actual garment has a little bit of a curved shape, I want to preserve that in my pattern. And I am tracing along the outside of that seam allowance, but if you wanted to have a little extra room, just in case it didn't quite fit, you could add some seam allowance as well. And then my last marking is here at the bottom, and I'm ready to connect all of these dots. To connect all of the dots, I'm going to use both a straight and a curved dressmaking ruler, and I like to start with the center front and go from there. And I like this curved ruler because it makes it really easy to get some nice accurate curves transferred to the paper, and it also makes it really easy to draw a armhole. Now I decided to change the neckline, so I am changing this to a square neckline, and then I'm going to mark the fold on the front and then mark that this is the front piece. Then I'm just going to repeat all of these steps for the back piece, marking the center and tracing it in the exact same way. I did keep the curved neckline for the back piece. I'm drawing all of my pattern pieces on the fold today just to save on paper, but if you prefer, you can definitely draw out the entire piece. Now, after cutting out my front and back pieces, I realized that my neckline adjustment meant that my shoulder seams would not quite match up, so I went ahead and just removed a little bit of extra paper from the front neckline, and this ended up working really well. So now moving on to the sleeve patterns, I have this balloon sleeve sweater that I absolutely love, and you can see it's made out of two distinct pattern pieces. So we'll start with the cuff, which is a really simple piece. I'm just going to mark the four corners of this piece and then trace around it. And this will again be cut on the fold since the sweater is currently folded in half. Then this upper sleeve piece is actually bigger than the cuff piece, and that's what gives it this balloon shape. So I'm going to stretch this to find the actual width of the piece, and then I'll mark these two sides of the lower edge of this piece. I'm also going to mark the underarm and then the upper shoulder of this sleeve piece, and then I can connect those dots using my ruler. I'm using the straight ruler to connect the side that is the fold as well as the underside of the sleeve, and then the curved ruler for the top and the bottom. Then I'll just mark the fold, and that is all there is to making the pattern. So next I'm going to cut out my pattern pieces, and I'm using this lovely bamboo rib knit that I got from fabric.com. I'm going to pin my pieces down on the fold and cut out all of my pattern pieces. So I'm going to cut out the front and back pieces once, then 2 of the sleeve pieces, and actually 4 of the cuff pieces because we are going to be making a double layer from those pieces. Now you might notice here that both of my selvage edges are folded towards the center of my fabric, giving me 2 distinctive fold lines, and I just did that to save on fabric so that I would use as much of it as possible. For this project I used 1.5 yards of fabric, and it was pretty much the perfect amount. I had a tiny bit left over, but it worked out really well. So here's a look at all of the pattern pieces. We have the back, the front, the 2 sleeve pieces, and then the 4 cuff pieces. So now I can get started on sewing the shirt together, and this is actually a really quick project, so if you're looking for something fast to make, this would be a good option. So I'm going to start by placing the front and back pieces together along the shoulder seams with the right sides together. Then I'll pin these down and sew them down using my serger. I will be using the serger today, but if you don't have a serger, you can just use a stretch stitch like a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. Next, I'm going to go ahead and sew the sleeves in place. So we're setting them in flat, which is a little bit easier to do on a knit fabric like this. So I'm going to take my sleeve piece and pin it in place in the armhole, matching up the edge of the sleeve with the edge of the armhole. And I'm just going to pin this down and sew it down using my serger. So now I have the upper sleeves attached, and I'm going to move on to sewing the side seams. So this is where it already starts to look like a shirt, which is really exciting. So I'm going to match up those underarm seams and then pin all the way down the side seam of the shirt and the side of the sleeve. Then I'll stitch all of this down with the serger, starting at the end of the sleeve and ending at the hem of the shirt. next I'm going to make the cuffs, and to do this I'm going to layer together 2 of the cuff pieces along the lower edge. Then I'll pin this down and sew it down using my serger. I'm going to repeat this on the other set of 2 cuffs as well. I gave that seam a quick press to one side, and then now I'm going to fold this in half along that seam, matching up both sides of the seam and then pinning along this long side. Then I'll sew down this entire edge using my serger. So now I'm left with this tube of fabric, and I'm going to turn this so that it's folded in half along that seam that we sewed earlier and give it a quick press so that everything looks nice and neat. Now I can add the cuff to the sleeve, and to do this I'm going to match them up along the side seam of the sleeve and the seam that we sewed in the cuff. And then I'll also match up the center of both of these pieces. Now remember that the cuff is smaller than the actual sleeve, so as I sew it on, I will be stretching the cuff to fit to the sleeve. To finish off the neckline, I opted to do just a simple hem, so I'm going to fold under the neck edge 1/4 inch, and I'm using my iron here to make sure that everything looks really nice and even, especially since I cut a square neckline. Now because I opted to hem this, it will have a little bit more of a curved look, but I think that looks really nice. So I'm just going to fold that down and pin all the way around it. Now to sew my hems, I'm going to use my regular sewing machine and a twin needle, which looks like this. You just thread 2 lines of thread into your sewing machine, and it gives you a double row of stitching with a zigzag on the back, so it works really well for knit fabrics. Here's what the back of that stitching looks like when it's done. It has this back and forth type of look and works great for stretch fabric. So now I'm just going to hem at the bottom of the shirt. I'm folding this up a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to sew this down again using my twin needle stitching on my regular sewing machine. So that is all there is to this project, and here is a look at how it turned out. I think the great thing about this pattern is that I could always change the neckline or the sleeves and make it in so many different ways. So it's one that I'm really excited to have added to my stash, and I love how this top turned out. I'm really pleased with how this shirt turned out. I really like the style of it, and I think it's something that will translate well across the seasons and mix into my wardrobe seamlessly, so I'm really excited about that, and I definitely want to make it in other colors. But that's going to be it for this video today. I hope you guys enjoyed it and enjoyed seeing how this shirt came together. Now, next week I will be back with 2 dress videos, so I'm really excited about that. I'm getting into all of my spring dress sewing, and I know a lot of you guys enjoyed the dress projects as well, so I hope you'll look forward to that in my next couple of videos. But thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out here on my channel today. If you are new to my channel and have not yet subscribed, I would love it if you would go ahead and do that now by pushing the red button down below to stay tuned for any of my future sewing projects. And if you would like to keep up with me outside of YouTube, Instagram and TikTok are the 2 best places to do that. And as always, they will be linked down below. Thank you guys again so much for watching and hanging out here today, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.